with it, but still we have our goof and our misses. But we do have floods of all kinds, and in fact, we've actually experienced them up here in the Pacific Northwest in January.
Yeah.
So it's starting the year off with meeting the word, no question, because we were isolated. We had our major north-south corridor interstate was shut down in 3 spots. The normal 400-mile detours were shut down due to mudslides and landslides in the passes. So the only way around was like 1,200 miles by going north up to Canada and then over and then down. Or to fly from Seattle to Portland. That was just your only 2 options.
Wow, now that's some crazy stuff there.
Yeah.
Well, let's take a look. Let's go to your actual Alta reports now, and let's look at, let's start out with your first one, and if you want to give us a brief overview, and you've called it metadata, the far look, and maybe just...
Oh, okay, I got you. All right.
Yeah,
I just wanted to know which one you were in, part 2. Or, okay, yeah.
I'm sorry, it's the latest one in January. Yeah. Sorry, my bad.
That's all right.
So...
Yeah, the far look is, we have 3 kinds of data that we usually use here. What we call immediacy data, which has emotional impetus from 3 days out to 3 weeks. Shorter-term data, which goes from the end of the 3rd week all the way through to the end of a 3rd month. And then longer-term data sets, which go from 3 months, presumably out forever, although realistically maybe only 10 or 12 years. And the granularity drops off, as I noted. What we did this time, to satisfy a request of my associate here, Igor, I dumped all of the immediacy and shorter-term data and only loaded longer-term. And it gave us a rather interesting look that does trail off, but it's referentially, it has a referential integrity, a self-referencing integrity in the sense that there's no circuitous loops in terms of the processing and things that you would expect to exist because of forecast X do exist when you go and look in that other part of the data. So we have a reasonably high degree of confidence that we're at least getting the broader overview in an accurate view. And it goes out to about 2019.
And that's what I was looking at. I was like, wow, this is some really, really interesting stuff in here. It talks a lot about it. So here's a specific question for you, because like I said, I haven't had an opportunity to read all of this yet.
And they're very long and dense.
Yeah, they are, and I really have to sit and just really be focused when I'm reading these because there's just a ton of information in here. One of the things that I did want to ask you is, you know, this February 14th, this date of January 20th to the 26th, I think that was the dates that you gave me. It seems like there's a little
blip in there.
Yeah, like a little lull kind of thing. Yeah. It's like, and it almost feels like they're allowing or everything's being allowed for the president-elect to get like settled into his office, and then things start rolling again. I mean, it's almost, and I don't really believe in coincidences, but it's just the timing is just very, very, very strange.
Curious to say.
Yes, it is, and I find it fascinating how this is working out that way. So let's talk about the first few days after the 26th, because that's when the language, begins again. What are some of the things within a week or so after the president gets elected that starts really showing itself as far as what it would do here in the United States?
Well, they're actually already underway, and they're just sort of in the background. Our data actually showed that the trend line that's going to manifest into visibility, which means climb into the media around the 26th and on, really started for us on the 11th of January here in the background. So we're fairly sanguine that it's going to involve Middle Eastern issues, but primarily everything economic. And what we're looking at is the next wave of a large-scale realization that the dollar is dying. And this is going to put huge pressures on the new administration, bearing in mind that basically, from our viewpoint here, let me put it this way, from our viewpoint here at Half-Assed Human, all of the efforts of the Obama administration, no matter what they may be in the specifics, can be said in the broader scale to already be doomed to failure. And we can state that for all of 2009 with some surety. Maybe at the end of 2009 they might wise up a bit.
So because what they're doing is still trying to conduct business as usual, and
well, it's not quite that. It's actually even worse than that. What they're actually trying to do is they're using the guys who used to do business as usual, who are desperately, or not desperately, but who are fixated on attempting to sustain a complex set of systems that have already proven themselves non-functional anymore, which is to say these guys are trying to save a criminal banking enterprise that puts the American homogeny at the top of the world based on the dollar. And it has already died. And we're just in the process of going through that death. And the politicos, the political elite here, and the lobbyists and everybody else, apparently are acting as though they don't realize this. Many of them may realize it as individuals and are simply acting in their own selfish interests. Such as lobbyists, for instance, who just want to, know the system is dying and want to take off what they can before it all crashes, that sort of a thing. However, in the main, it appears that the individuals at the top of the heap are attempting to maintain the shape of the heap in spite of the fact that we no longer have slope stability and that everything is crumbling. So it's not particularly a rational approach to things, and thus everything that they attempt to do will fail. Just like Bush attempted to force democracy on someone, which is a non sequitur, it's an oxymoron. People choose and take democracy for themselves. You can't force it on anyone, so it was doomed to fail. The fact that we have the failure as a status quo of low-grade war ticking over at the moment is neither here nor there. So what if the number of deaths per month is down and their surge worked? The minute anything changes, it all falls to pieces again, and off we go again, and it's still a failure. So we're looking at a failure of the Obama administration baked into the cake already, the way that we're now looking back at the abysmal failure of the Bush administration. And here we can see that the Obama administration is going to fail in some specific ways, and we can predict those up front because we can see the kinds of moves they're making now and who they're choosing to guide things.
And, that's the kind of the thing that I've been looking at with this whole thing is surely they've got to understand that this, they just cannot continue with the processes and their mindsets in the same way because obviously it hasn't worked.
Correct. The thinking that got us here won't be the thinking that gets us out.
Exactly.
But the people that are doing the thinking now are those that are thinking those kind of thoughts that got us here. So they can't step outside of their own box. They cannot see that they are the part of the problem.
Well, and I think this might be a really good place for us to take a real short break here, Clif. And then when we come back, obviously we're going to delve into some other things as it relates to that and some more additional things. So for the rest of you, stay tuned. We'll be back with more of Clif High right here with Journeys with Rebecca. With Rebecca, and we are here with Clif High from Half Past Human. Now, Clif, I just had a moment to pop into the chat box, and there was a question in there that I happened to capture that I thought might be kind of a really great place for us. Maybe we're going to just kind of shift gears here just a little bit.
Sure.
And the question is about a new language that is being developed and the new sense of perception of time and also of thought to occur this year.
Yeah, there's the new language stuff we started picking up some time back, perhaps 2 or 3 years ago. And there's an interesting corollary with our work that shows that the longer the lead time, the more impacting it'll be on the social matrix that surrounds us. So finding it out a couple of years ahead of its actual inception shows that it's going to have a huge, widespread impact on a lot of people. And the language, it's hard to say at this point because our linguistics around the new language are sparse. We're still building that data set as we go forward. But it appears as though some form of new communication is going to arise coincident with all of the other changes that are going to occur here in on the planet this year. And this new language will be, it's linked for us with the planetary populist movement that emerges in late 2009 and in through 2010, which leads to a more active sort of an insurrection of peoples against the powers that be. I hate to use the word revolution because it doesn't really apply.
Yeah, I understand.
It's not revolution against governments per se. It's just that everybody gets fed up in a couple of years in dealing with the power elite. And these are people that are going to run amok. And they're not particularly evil individuals or anything. Their minds snap. They just can't take the rate of change and stress. Their worldview is too rigid to accommodate those changes that will come in this year and next and beyond, and they will just absolutely lose it, and many of them will initially, we think this year at least, act out in violence. a lot of other individuals will run into that same wall of disbelief as their worldview crumbles around them and new facts must be integrated or denied, and they'll go into this like sort of active denial state where they'll walk around more or less pretending that, oh well, you know, up is down, black is white, red is blue, this sort of thing, and try and live life and force it, if you will. And there'll be these kind of like walking wounded that will be causing problems for the rest of that. I mean, we'll start to see incidences of car accidents increase as these people become less and less functional when they drive around. We may find one or two instances of public transportation and or things. We have language that suggests things like drawbridges. A drawbridge guy just might go crazy one day and leave the drawbridge up or down or whenever when he shouldn't, causing problems to occur. And we'll see a lot of these things appear, but the underlying cause is going to be this active cognitive dissonance, as many of these people with a rigid worldview are shoved into such circumstances that make that worldview less operable in the reality that's manifesting around us.
Right, and it's based on all the changes, and you know that's what this has all been about, is just change upon change, and that's, I think when last year when we talked, 2008, we talked about 2009 as really being probably one of the most pivotal points in transformation or the beginning of change.
Yeah, no going back from here. Yeah.
Right, exactly, and it's like there's so many things that happen one on top of the other that the wow factor, if you will, or the surprise factor, it almost gets desensitized because it's just like one change on top of the other for many people.
And they will become numb, and we'll actually start seeing a sizable percentage of the population in the developed world, English-speaking or not, run into this situation, yes. And it will impact a lot of people as the changes start not only increasing in the speed at which they happen, but the orders of magnitude that they encompass. So, for instance, we're going to have a financial problem here on January 26th. Along with that financial problem will be ripples that will cause all kinds of problems in the military. Those ripples are military and militaries around the world. Those ripples will continue all the way through to May and will grow in size as each and every one of the attempts to solve problems, so to speak, fail in turn, pushing us closer and closer and closer and closer to desperate actions. And this will be the case in all realms of life. There will be no fix to the stock market, for instance, such that summer will be a return to the good old days and everybody will be investing in 401ks and this kind of thing. That world is gone. It's difficult for me to say this, and it's really difficult for a lot of people to hear it and accept it. I'm not actually asking for anybody to accept it. Everybody should go on out, dispute everything I say, and find out for themselves, and they'll soon start to learn to see these patterns on their own and observe them in their daily life around them. But unless it's gotten beyond them and they just don't grasp it, the dollar is dying. That will make huge changes in the United States, since we're all about the full faith and credit of the United States government is what backs the dollar. Well, if the dollar is gone, it kind of means, what's the point of the full faith and credit? Even what's the point of the United States government?
Yeah, it's kind of a
that's their product.
Yeah.
That's their product. It's the specie, the currency that allows us